And when that didn't happen, I was like, you asked, how did I get into freestyle? I was just thinking to myself, how can I still make this dream come true? How can I still become an Olympian, even though I can't do ice skating anymore? Because it honestly was such an expensive sport. There was no way at 15 I can make that feasible. And everybody's like, well, skiing is not cheap. But there were ways around that. I was
Sure.
actually kicked out when I was 15, and I lived in a tent up in Winter Park for about 3 years. I did a lot of
Wow.
couch surfing. I did a lot of making money stretch. I did a lot of things to make it work that,
Mhm.
maybe we don't need to talk about. I would like hike up the hill early in the morning to get up the mountain so I wouldn't have to pay for lift tickets. That was one of the things. There were a few.
Yeah,
But where there's a will, there's a way. And
sure.
I do a ton of charity work now, so I think I'm good.
So that drive though, I mean, that's incredible drive and resiliency to want to go out and hit those goals. I mean, where does that or yeah, where does that come from for you? I mean, it was the goal of trying to be in the Olympics at such a young age and then chemical engineering, like where would you say that drive comes from? Because there's not a lot of people that are willing to go through and stretch and couch surf and live in a tent up in freezing cold Colorado and like all
Yeah.
these things are like absolutely remarkable and show a lot of drive to get where you want to. I mean, not only one-time Olympian, two Olympics, unbelievable career.
Thank you.
So yeah, and that's just the athletic career. And then you get into the life, goes on after. It's always funny when you talk to people and like, oh, I'm retired. And they're like 27 in our
29.
sport or 25, it's younger now. They're like, oh, I'm retired, like, or they say they go through their stints in rehab. It's like, oh, knee rehab. But
Yeah.
where would you say that drive kind of has come from?
Uh, I mean, since I was 5,
Hmm.
literally had those two goals, and they seem so unrelated,
Hmm.
chemical engineering and Olympian. They seem so unrelated. And I think it's so interesting how they accumulated into what I do now so
Hmm.
perfectly. And what I do now is so what I'm meant to do. And I wouldn't have had the tenacity or experiences to actually do what I'm doing now, which is helping so many people around the world. And you mentioned I had an extensive career and a lot of accomplishments in freestyle mogul skiing, and I'm super, super proud of it. I tell you, I wear my Olympic ring every day. I do not think these should be locked up in a security box anywhere or a vault.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge honor because it is so hard, and I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm sure your listeners know exactly what I'm talking about, like how incredibly hard it is to qualify to ski in the games and to do well from there. Um, so anyways, I'm very proud of what I've done in skiing, but I'm far more proud of what I do today and the people that were able to help. And I think that was just part of my mission in life. And maybe
Hmm.
that's why the tenacity really came out. I also think when I was kicked out and I was forced to, well, not forced, I mean, just I had no other means. I was living in a tent in Winter Park, and I really, really developed this beautiful, I don't want to sound too like mystical or anything, but a beautiful connection with nature and spirituality that guided me through so much of what I've been through.
Yeah, I mean that's wild going through and how so as you go through and you decide that you're finishing with your ski career, right? You go after the last Olympics, and then how quickly do you know where the next step is? I mean, does it take a little bit of like soul searching? You get the degree in chemical engineering, cum laude from Colorado School of Mines, and then is it like, all right, I know exactly what I want to do with this, or is it take a little bit after you've kind of hit two of those big milestones you had since you were 5 years old?
I love that you mentioned I was cum laude. I was like working my butt off for that honor. And my dad is like, what are you doing? Nobody's ever gonna know. They're not gonna know. And I'm like, no, they're gonna know because I'm gonna tell them.
They know, they know.
Because that was hard. That was definitely hard, especially after having a long gap. Because
Mhm.
I went to Colorado School of Mines, and they only offers certain classes certain semesters. So at some point there, I was just at a standstill for what I could accomplish while I was still on World Cup. And so I still had quite a bit to do when I retired. And I also started having children right away. And I was like, well, ready for that next chapter in my life.
Mhm.
And so you asked how that transition went. Well, while I was on World Cup, I always knew what I was going to do once I was retired. I was already working on it. I mean, I always flipped houses to be able to afford World Cup. I know your listeners probably know how challenging that is when you
Oh
first
yeah.
make World Cup and you're on in a non-funded position. How does this girl living in a tent, figure that out? And I have some very creative stories I could tell you about how I did manage that. And one of them was flipping houses and making money from that, and rolling that over, and then doing VRBO with my place in Park City while I was
Mhm.
on World Cup. And I'm trying to think make sure I'm answering your original question. So I was already doing that kind of thing. And then I had just had my heart set on a building in downtown Denver that I would just go by. And I just loved it so much that I
Mhm.
don't know what it was, the energy. And it was a perfect triangle and brickwork everywhere. And I followed this building for 3 years, and I get it on foreclosure at the auction. And I'm renovating it so that this guy can rent the space from me and run his salon and spa out of it. And after I do this beautiful renovation, it was 2008 and the
Okay.
stock market crashed.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that clip. You can click right here to see the entire episode. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.